Yes, all right. So I'm April Masten. And my talk this evening draws from my new book, Diamond and Juba, The Raucous World of 19th Century Challenge Dancing, which is just officially coming out on December 9th with the University of Illinois Press, so 2 more weeks. And this is a dual biography. Diamond and Juba tells the intertwined stories of these two extraordinary jig dancers, an Irish-American named John Diamond and African-American William Henry Lane. And Lane was also known as Juba. Both of these dancers achieved international fame in the mid-19th century as competitors in the art and sport of challenge dancing. The book follows these two dancers from their earliest days as child performers in New York City's Five Points district to the pinnacles of their success in the glittering pleasure gardens and legitimate theaters of America and England. Challenge dancing was born from lower class social interaction. During the first half of the 19th century, countless working class men, women, and children faced off in jig dancing competitions called challenge dances for pleasure, prestige, and profit. They honed their skills and made their names dancing in neighborhood taverns and dance houses and in the city streets and wharfside markets. Although promoted as a manly art with close ties to boxing, challenge dancing also featured women competitors, cross-dressing, and blackface. Those who became professionals built their careers working the theater circuits and touring with equestrian circuses and with blackface minstrel troupes. And those who became champion dancers, like Diamond and Juba, earned national reputations by winning scored bouts for hefty wagers, side bets, and silver belts. The astonishing jig dancing of challenge dancing's foremost practitioners attracted huge audiences across northeastern port cities, along the Mississippi Valley circus routes, and into England and Ireland's provincial music halls. Popular dance forms like challenge dancing that come from a pre-photography, pre-film era are not that easy to recover. Equally daunting is trying to reconstruct the lives and dancing practices of working class people who left no written record. To overcome these challenges, I followed my dancers wherever their story took me, from the dockside markets to tavern dance floors to theater stages to circus and boxing rings. I researched each of those places and the people in them. And why did I do that? Because popular dances arise from and reflect back the society in which they are practiced. When we learn about Diamond and Juba's dancing, we learn about the society in which they lived, things that we wouldn't otherwise know. To write good history and biography, you have to go where your material leads you, wherever that is. You can't say things like I wanted to say it, which is, oh my God, I'm writing about dancers. I don't want to learn about boxing. I don't care about circuses, and I certainly don't want to know about blackface. But I had to, because that's where my dancers led me. It's also why it took a long time to write this book, almost 20 years of research and writing. But spending that time reconstructing the world of challenge dancing was worth it, because it provides a rare glimpse into the relations and the strivings of free Black and immigrant people who were trying to survive in an expanding nation, keen for talent, yet divided by prejudice. Tonight, I'm going to show you just how much you can learn from reading this one advertisement. Now, I'm not going to ask you to read it because I'm going to pick it apart. I'm going to pick it apart. This is about a dancing match between Diamond and Juba, who are called the most renowned dancers in the world. Okay, so on Sunday, July 7th, 1844, the New York Herald announced a great public contest between the original John Diamond and the colored boy Juba. The match would be danced for a wager of $200 on Monday evening, July 8th at the Bowery Amphitheater. The original John Diamond, okay, so you can see, I'm just going to point this out just for fun, that there says $100 here, but each dancer puts up $100, which makes it a $200 stake. I'm just going to point that out because I find this all fascinating, obviously. The original John Diamond was a 20-year-old Irish American who had been dancing what were called Negro jigs and jig dancing matches on stage for 5 years. He is called the original because of the many impersonators who used his name to attract audiences. The colored boy Juba was an 18-year-old African-American named William Henry Lane, who had been dancing Negro jigs and jig dancing matches on stage for 3 years under various stage names, including Master Rattler and Master Diamond. He's one of those impersonators, before adopting the stage name Juba. Although their temperaments were very different, both of these dancers grew up and gained reputations as dancers in New York City's integrated Sixth Ward. Both began their dancing careers at 8 years old, working in dockside taverns. Both danced in blackface for P.T. Barnum in the early 1840s. And both were dancing for blackface minstrel troupes at the time that this contest took place. And they both died very young, in their 30s. The dances these opponents would perform were produced by Black and Irish exchange. This was not an instance of cultural appropriation, of white people stealing from Black people for their own profit. The two dancers could not actually have competed at this level without a shared dancing practice. And I'm going to show you how I know that by reading this ad. So back to the ad. This announcement lays out both the terms and the rules for the match. The terms say that the contestants will meet and dance 3 jigs, 2 reels, and the Camptown hornpipe. Can you see that? I've kind of highlighted those for you. And that 5 judges selected for their ability and knowledge of the art would adjudicate, so that a fair decision will be made. The rules affecting the judging were also laid out. Each dancer will select his own violin, and victory will be decided by the best time and the greatest number of steps. Now, any working class person who danced would have been familiar with these terms and rules. Jigs, reels, and hornpipes were the tune changes in an Irish set dance. Judges with ability and knowledge were dancers themselves, and violins and fiddles were the customary accompaniment at Irish and African-American dance parties and competitions. Challenge dancing was itself a creolized form taken from Irish partner dancing and produced by a history of pervasive Black-Irish social interaction. That interaction took place voluntarily and under duress on land and sea as soon as African slaves started coming to this country, in colonial outposts and major metropolises. But it flourished most spectacularly in the seaport and riverfront cities of Jacksonian America. Now, Jacksonian America refers to the 1820s to the 1840s. This is the age of the common man. And this is like a market in Philadelphia that you could see men, women, children, and dogs, and Black people, white people, sailors. So these were places where a lot of people mingled. During those years, the Jacksonian era, Irish immigrants settled in the poorest neighborhoods of American towns and cities where the highest population of free African Americans lived. Those populations rose in New York, where this match was held after 1827, when the British government repealed all restrictions on Irish immigration, and enslaved African Americans were officially emancipated, if not always liberated, in New York. Sometimes instead of being liberated, they got emancipated and then indentured so that they could be kept. By the 1840s, their numbers in New York City were close to equal, with approximately 18,000 alien Irish and 14,000 African Americans. Young people seeking employment dominated both of these populations, with single Irish women outnumbering the Irish men. So in these unsegregated neighborhoods, like this market in Philadelphia, poor whites and Blacks, quote, mixed together like whortleberries and cream, according to one observer. They rubbed shoulders in the streets, they drank and danced in the same public houses, they rented rooms in the same buildings, and they even intermarried. Their shared locality and cultural mingling made challenge dancing common to them all. Now, challenge dancing had roots in both Africa and Ireland. Challenge dancers performed Negro jigs, and that's a term that in the 1800s referred to a style of dancing rather than a dancer's race. Jigs were lively step dances with British and European origins. However, in the United States, people used these terms, jig dancing and Negro dancing, interchangeably to refer to the dances that were derived from the lively jigs, reels, and hornpipes of Irish set dancing and the rhythmic footwork, the hip play, and upper body movements of West African dance practices. The dancing matches, which were often called breakdowns by contemporaries, took place at the end of each set of tunes, like jigs, reels, and hornpipes, or they took place at the end of a night of dancing amongst these ordinary people. And in fact, that word set dancing, there's a boxing term to set to, the boxers set to, and that actually comes from challenge dancing. The man and woman in a couple might compete against each other, or they might challenge another couple to a competition, or they might break up and dance in single-sex competitions. Woo, Judy, that's the girl. Handle your feet, Avernine. That's it as usual. Stand to me. Hurrah for our side of the house. That's what an Irish dancing partner called out to his partner in the 1820s. The winner of a dancing match was the couple or person who was the best dancer or the archest wag sometimes. The archest wag meaning the funniest dancer. And that person was the one who held out the longest while performing the greatest variety of steps. And that encouraged borrowing not only from rival jig dancers, but also from other dance genres. For instance, that dancer's pose over there on the side is an attitude. That's an attitude pose which comes from ballet. Dancing matches were called takes in Ireland, and they were called eel dances in America for the prizes that were awarded. Also in America, they were held in these lower class dance houses for drinks or wagers, and on the streets for food or small change. And that was both as an amusement and it was to contribute to the working family's income. The visiting novelist Charles Dickens recorded this practice in his 1842 description of our Juba dancing in an African-American tavern in Five Points, New York. Dickens was familiar with the format of set dancing. Only the style of the steps was new. And this is what he said. Every gentleman sets as long as he likes to the opposite lady and the opposite lady to him. Now that's Irish set dancing. And all are so long about it that the sport begins to languish. Remember that challenge dancing came at the end of the night. When suddenly the lively hero dashes to the rescue, single shuffle, double shuffle, cut, and cross cut. Those are Irish steps. Snapping his fingers, rolling his eyes, turning in his knees. Those are African moves. Spinning about on his heels and his toes, a la ballet. When having danced his partner off her feet and himself too, he finishes by leaping gloriously on the bar counter and calling for something to drink. This dance was an African-American rendition of an Irish set dance. And this is an illustration, a British illustration for that scene in American Notes from the time. Dickens's hero was not performing solo. He and his female partner were in competition. And that's something you might not notice unless you knew that women also competed. And that competition had rules. The male dancer won the match with skill and wit by combining Irish crosscuts and African turned-in knees, and by exceeding his partner's time on the floor. In the ad that I showed you, it says best time and greatest number of steps. So it's how long can he dance without repeating a step? And that's in fact what we've just heard this Juba has done in front of Dickens. He also then expected a reward, and in this case, it was free drinks. And at Diamond and Juba's contest, it was going to be that $200 wager. Okay. So other details in the ad connect this match to this Black and Irish context and practice as well. So according to the Herald, the Bowery Amphitheater had been expressly chosen for the match, quote, as its accommodations will afford all a fair view of each step of these wonderful dancers. And you can see this is the Bowery Amphitheater. It was set up for a circus, but they would leave that board or move that board to the center, and the dancers would dance on top of that. At tavern matches in Ireland and in the United States, the spectators closely followed the dancers' feet, and they took part in the judging by cheering and applauding their favorite. And they also assessed the judges' choices when they were doing that. And all of that made having a clear view of the stage very important on July 8th. Everyone watched and listened, counting the dancers' steps and any missteps or breaks with the rhythm, which explains why each dancer brought his own violinist with him. Choosing the right fiddler could win the match for the dancer, whose speed and accuracy depended on the musician's ability to anticipate his moves. Now, in Ireland and in America and in West Africa, good dancers did not just follow the music. They embellished it with their rhythms. They played a duet with the musician. Nor did a good musician just keep time for the dancer. They responded to the steps, inserting rhythmic and melodic passages of their own. In fact, fiddlers and dancers also challenged each other to matches. So Diamond and Juba only charged a shilling, and you can see that's 12.5 cents. They only charged a shilling for a ticket, and they expected to fill the theater because of something called imaginary participation based on past experience of real practice. In other words, audiences at dancing matches were made up primarily of people who also did Negro jigs. Quote, the excitement was great and glorious at an 1843 match dance between Joe Miles and John Daniels for $50 a side. This is the Sporting Whip reporting. Women, as well as male bipeds, enjoyed the sport with a relish keen and delightful. So women and male bipeds is a great term. So this excitement was noticed by businessmen like P.T. Barnum, who developed commercial entertainments to take advantage of America's burgeoning market economy. Commercialization can be described as taking a truly popular cultural practice, like challenge dancing, and monetizing it by changing it slightly and selling it back to the people as spectacle. So this is a kind of an example of that happening. This is a poster for a play called New York as It Is in 1848. And so this is actually a scene you could have seen every day down on the wharf of these boys dancing for eels, but it gets put in a play as part of a scene, and now it's become a spectacle that you can sell. So Barnum, like this, trolled the wharfside districts looking for working class amusements to put on the stage. And in our case, he hired boy dancers and he presented them in mock competitions, wherein the dancing is real, but the wagers were fakes. And that meant that only Barnum made money from the contest. He would just have paid the dancers their wages. Like at Diamond and Juba's contest, the dancers would have split the ticket receipts, and then the winner would have got the wager. Barnum also dressed his dancers in blackface. Blackface costumes were by nature racist, but they also made it possible for Black dancers to perform undetected on white stages, and also for good dancers to impersonate each other, like Juba dancing as Master Diamond in blackface. So a Black dancer wearing blackface to pretend he's a white dancer wearing blackface. Very, very convoluted. Having the dancers appear in black also identifies their dancing, this jig dancing, as American rather than as Irish. Now, both Diamond and Juba earned wages and garnered fame as youngsters by dancing gag or mock matches for the likes of Barnum. But their female rivals did not make the cut, mostly due to rising middle-class conceptions of appropriate female behavior. A few young women did compete in public at jig dancing contests in public in the 1840s, but their scanty and often sexist depiction, in fact, most newspapers dismissed them as prostitutes, and that's certainly what these women were, probably prostitutes from what we know about them, but they were actually dancers at this moment, but they're depicted in that way because that makes it easy to ignore their contributions to the sport. But they did contribute. For instance, to make his dancing more exciting, Juba added ballet dancers' pirouettes on point to his champion steps. And Diamond's first staged match was a cross-dressed travesty of currently popular contests between ballerinas. Entertainment managers who reaped the benefits felt no qualms about presenting fake diamonds or gag matches. But working class dancers and their fans knew the difference between wages, getting paid to pretend, and wagers, actually competing. That is why the ad specifies that the building had been expressly hired for this night only. It told the public that this match was not part of the regular program being presented at the Bowery, which included blackface minstrelsy. It was a standalone sporting event for which spectators would need a separate ticket. This separation distinguished the match from a blackface act, as did several other elements in the ad. So at the time this match took place, Diamond was working at the Bowery Amphitheater for Tryon's Equestrian Circus in conjunction with a band of blackface minstrels who called themselves Virginia Serenaders. Juba was working at the Concert Saloon where the tickets were being sold for their contest with a band of black and white musicians who called themselves Virginia Serenaders. And this is, in fact, an image of the Virginia Serenaders. So who it is, we have no idea, really. Challenge dancing clearly intersected with blackface minstrelsy, but its origins in mixed-race communities distinguished it from other blackface acts. So the minstrel troupe arose as a separate genre in 1843. Minstrel troupes were quartets of singer-musicians who dressed in blackface costumes and sang. They did that to sing African-American songs in four-part harmony. That was super popular in the 1840s, and also to parody African-American customs. Now, these troupes were not immediately popular. In fact, they depended on champion dancers to draw them a crowd. And dancers exploited the employment opportunities they offered. As you can see, the dancers right out there in front. But rather than minstrelsy then defining challenge dancers, the challenge dancers piloted the minstrelsy trade for a time. Quote, "Without the champion jig dancer," notes minstrel manager Frank Dumont, "the minstrel troupe is a ship without a rudder. He was the star of the troupe. If he signals his intention of quitting the show, the entire troupe would beg him on bended knees not to leave them to their fate." So this need enables challenge dancers like Diamond and Juba, the champions, it enables them to remain autonomous, and they could demand quite high wagers. Now, to prove to the public that their dancing match would be authentic and not a minstrelsy act, Diamond and Juba followed the protocol used by boxers. This protocol also solidified challenge dancing's classification as a manly sport, because as I've already mentioned, women are also challenge dancing. You know, we're making it into a manly sport now. Boxing actually began as an integrated sport in England. This is the Crib and Molyneux match from 1811, so quite early. And then boxing as a sport comes over, you know, it's just fighting was happening here, but as a sport, it comes over in the early 19th century to America. So our match began with a published challenge in the New York Herald between the two dancers' seconds. Now you can see the boxers' seconds standing behind them. They were like the promoters or the endorsers. The original challenge had been made orally by JMS, you can see his initials on the bottom, the proprietor of the Concert Saloon, which shared a building on Chambers Street with a boxing gymnasium and pistol gallery. He, JSM, would match the colored boy Juba for $100 against any breakdown dancer in the world. Now, acting as Diamond's second, the other guy, George B. Wooldridge, and he's a former editor of the New York Whip, and that was a journal that covered boxing and other betting sports, he accepted Juba's challenge and he specified his terms. Quote, I will match John Diamond against him for the above sum in a jig and reel, one judge to be selected by each party, they to select a third. If danced in private, the expense to be divided. If public, the winner of the match to have all the receipts over the actual expenses. Now, including the selection of the judges and how the money would be divided were authenticating details. JSM accepted Wooldridge's terms the next day and certified that he was ready to bind the wager and for the match to come off within 1 week at any place hereafter agreed upon. So these preliminaries identified these dancers as serious athletes. And then, as the ad I showed you for the contest suggests, the fame of these two celebrated breakdown dancers, because they were all dancing on the stages already, that enables their seconds then to present this match as a championship. So like boxers at this time, any number of dancers could designate themselves the champion of a particular city or neighborhood or state. There was no official organization that backed their claims. Diamond and Juba's friends therefore anxiously wished for a public trial to determine which should be called, in typical boxing hyperbole, champion dancer of the world. The time to decide has come. Now, the popular press offered no post-match coverage of the 1844 contest, but Juba's subsequent playbills, the African-American dancer, claims that he has prevailed. Right? Greatest dancer in the world, king of all dancers. And then he says how he's won John Diamond at both at that theater and then also at the Bowery Amphitheater. This lacuna, the fact that the popular press didn't cover the match afterwards, has led some scholars to speculate that the editor of the Herald was too racist to print the result. Others take it to mean that all dancing matches were fakes. But the outcome of a dance match was rarely reported on unless the result was disputed. That African-American Juba won, and no one challenged the decision or batted an eye when he dubs himself king of all dancers, can only be explained by the origins and long-standing practice of challenge dancing in integrated Black and Irish communities. Now, if you don't know this history, you might think that Diamond and Juba's match was the product of animosity caused by job competition between Black and Irish workers in industrializing cities. And that's what most people have thought. But their shared Negro jigs suggest not just conflicts, but also collaborations between dancers, as well as reconfigurations of Irish and African dance steps. And when a score of women jumped on the music hall stage during the Civil War and challenged Tommy Peel, Hank Mason, or any other man or female in the country to dance a match for $500 stake, you might suppose they were just copying the men. That's Kitty O'Neill, the champion dancer, and this is Tommy Peel, and you can see he's a champion because he's wearing his silver belt there. All right, where was it? Oh, yes. But no jig dancer who frequented tavern dance houses would have been surprised to see a woman challenging men. And if you didn't know that dancers adopted the rules of boxing, you might even question whether jig dancing could be judged an actual sport. But those assumptions would not be based on the historical context in which Diamond and Juba lived and danced, and that is the Raucous World that I have documented in this book. Thank you. All right. So I'm done, but if you want to ask me anything, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I guess you really have to recreate your story from whatever newspapers and things like that that you can find. I suppose it makes you wonder what wasn't reported, because there's nobody around to really talk about But the newspapers are so important, right?
Yes, the newspapers were really important. I got the sort of the idea from seeing a tiny, tiny little ad for a challenge dance in the sporting papers. And so I thought, well, and this is before newspapers were digitalized. And so I start to look through those papers and I'm finding a few more. And then of course that particular advertisement that I'm talking about was known because it was bigger. So a lot of historians had seen it. But in fact, yeah, it was the newspapers. And then what do they lead me to? I have to kind of read it so I see, wait, jigs, reels, and hornpipes. Wait a minute. Well, these are Irish steps. So then I start looking for Irish people dancing in America, and then I find them. And then so, and yeah, but it did start with that ad and with these little ads that I found for challenge dance. This newspaper is really, really important. Yes, John.
Challenge dancing is for me a new term. When did it cease to be known? When did challenge dancing fade out, and why?
Well, it's kind of clear that it happened as during the 1850s, blackface minstrelsy becomes much more popular and much more racist. And of course, this is the same moment that there's all this conflict over slavery in the South. And so we're starting to lead up towards what's going to turn out to be a civil war. And after the Civil War, you don't see this kind of thing at all going on. Not until, of course, when you get in the 20th century, and then you get tap dancers who do challenges. So it dies out just before the Civil War because of the rise of sort of this minstrelsy that just only pokes fun at it. And also because those integrated communities then are kind of put at odds with each other because of all the strife that's going on.
There were race riots in New York.
In 1863, we have a race riot in New York, that's right. And that's, and that's during the war. But so you do have, there are always Black and Irish people living near each other, Black and white, working class people in the same neighborhoods. It just are. But this kind of really interchanging in a way that's very friendly does die out with the Civil War. Yeah, the Civil War. So, yeah.
I was going to say, because even today, what you see, and the term breakdancing.
Yes.
Contemporarily now, we have, people on the street and they're doing breakdancing, and they do challenge each other as well.
Yeah. So there is a resurgence. This is why I think, even though I'm looking at the 1840s, I think it's a very important topic for today, too. Because one of the things you see in those breakdancing matches, they have these things called ciphers, and actually in set dancing contests now, and also the step dancing, the Irish step dancing, you see all nationalities getting involved now, all different kinds of people, and men and women, and Black, there's a Black female famous step dancer now, one of the best Irish dancers in the world. Well, that's just a reminder that dancing is a time when people come together, and what you're really looking for is not what is the color of the person dancing across from me, but are they good dancers or not? I want a good dancer to dance with. And so when you went to these taverns, they were looking for a good dancer to dance with, not a particular color or whatever. Yeah.
Did you come across any information on the relationship between Diamond and Juba? There was a personal relationship. Did they know each other? Were they friends? Did they hang out?
Isn't that the sad thing about studying working class people, is they don't leave letters really. So what I did was follow them to see when they came together for these matches, because it wasn't just this one match. They had about 3 or 4 matches. And obviously to do something like this, to promote a big contest, they were working together. So I know they worked together at least. And then I know they grew up in the same neighborhoods. But it doesn't mean they knew each other then, but they certainly knew, they had the same kind of background so that they could actually work together. So they were competitors, but they were also cooperating with each other. Absolutely.
I assume the $500 purse.
That was huge. Well, that's
enormous.
Yeah. Well,
enormous.
And they only say $100, and that's to show, another way to show this is a real match. Because when Barnum put on matches, he always had to be a $500 stake, because he was There was no stake. Nobody was putting any money up, right? He was just having these fake matches. But people went to them and loved them because the dancing was still fantastic. The dancers still danced their little hearts out.
I said that $100 also.
Yeah.
A substantial,
Yes.
substantial
Yes.
amount of money for these guys.
Yeah, because some working class people are making $1 a week,
Yeah.
right? It's men,
Okay.
men anyway. Women weren't making that much. Yeah, so it was a substantial amount. But like the other one I mentioned, the $50 stake with the two guys with the bipeds watching them, that was more common. And actually, I do have even John Diamond dancing a $10 match too. So, yeah, it was just a way to pad your purse, you know. And these guys both are fortunate because although a lot of people are dancing on the street for small change, that they get picked up by Barnum means they have salaries. Although Diamond is kind of indentured or enslaved. The white dancer is indentured and enslaved to Barnum. He runs away from him a couple times, so I don't think the terms were very good. In fact, I think he got $12 a month to dance for him, and he danced for him, you know, every day during the month. So, but he was young. He was 14. They're both very young when they start out. And then their dancers work in places like taverns where it's smoky and lots of people around you, and so they both die of tuberculosis. They both get consumption and die young. And most of the dancers I studied to around them also dance. They die young too. So sad.
So it was consumption because they died very young.
Yeah, they both
20s or something.
Diamond dies when Juba dies. Well, Diamond dies first, or I can't remember which right now, but they both die between 30 and 33. That age. Yeah.
I think though that life expectancy back there was not long.
It was shorter, but say they're working with musicians, and the musicians aren't dancing. They're not getting hot and cold and going out, you know, sweaty and breathing the same way. And the musicians live into their 50s, 60s, and 70s. So I think it's the dancing trade was particularly hard on people. I mean, it's a super working class trade. You're working with your body, right? You're with your body. Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, the descriptions of the dancing, it's such a shame that we don't have visuals, you know,
Yeah.
early on of recordings
Yeah.
to see. But a little bit of reading that I did was that Juba perhaps was he is maybe considered the originator of tap dancing.
Well,
Find it.
Well, I'm arguing that no, they're both the originators of tap dancing. You know, it's tap dance, and I think tap dancers would agree, it's a total melange of lots of different kinds of dance. And, you know, Juba comes out of the same tradition. He's not an African, he's an African American. So he's learning the Irish dancing as a young boy too, even though he's, you know, Black. And he has been called the originator, but I think one of the things I'm arguing is that he and Diamond are the originators together in some ways. But I don't think there is a real origin. The origins are Africa and Ireland and also other European countries. At least of tap dance itself, it's got a lot of legacies. Yeah. Right.
It makes me think that the cakewalk from a little bit later is out of this tradition. You know,
From cake
it was a
dancing.
bit more refined, the cakewalk.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it was a contest.
Yeah, it was.
Strutting.
Yeah, it was strutting. That's
It would
right.
be the end of the Black Vaudeville show.
Yes.
Or show, and whoever was doing the best moves would win the cake.
That's exactly right. And the terms like "she takes the cake,"
Right.
this all comes from the cake dancing. And the cake dancing starts in Ireland, but to be honest with you, the African Americans are the ones that continue it in America on plantations. They do cakewalks for their masters, and maybe the mistress will bake a cake for them, or maybe they'll bake one for themselves, and they have these cakewalks. And you know, the strutting also comes from the carrying of things on your head, right? So in Africa, a lot of people carry water and so on their heads. But in Ireland, a really great dancer could dance with a cup of water on his head and not spill a drop. So I'm just saying there were so many things they had in common as well as different, that both the commonalities and the differences are what brought them together and made them want to dance with each other. Yeah, that's great. I love these words move on. Like set, to me, set dancing, and then it's the set two in boxing. It's like, oh, And also bout, a bout of boxing, a bout is a little bit of dancing. It's the same word, except in Irish, it's bouta, you know.
I can't resist, you mentioned takeover. I was a student at the University of Vermont, and they had perhaps a tradition of 100 years of cakewalking as a competition, and the fraternities competed against one another in blackface until the 1960s.
Yeah.
When they switched to green face for 1 year, went to white face and probably the band all over.
Yeah, yeah.
For me, the term cakewalk means something that's very easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
And
yeah.
it's a cakewalk. I didn't realize it was a competition.
No.
Well, when,
Had a different derivation maybe, or it.
well, it's obviously a competition, but I remember going to he's a Catholic boy. I went to the Carmel Mission when they had their festival, and the cakewalk was just like musical chairs. You walked on these things, and when it stopped, if you were on the one square, you won the cake. So that's what you're thinking. I think that's another form of cakewalking, kind of like musical chairs, where most of it musical chairs.
They had all this, turn of the century, they had all this sheet music that were cakewalks.
Yes,
That actually.
but those
But
come.
it was- Yeah.
Yeah, but those are coming out of vaudeville and also, it's all the African American performances and so on. Yeah. But vaudeville, cakewalk's really big in vaudeville. Yeah. Cake dancing and tough dancing, and they had all. I don't know if you've ever seen them. Was it Belle Alexander? No, who was the one that did the first movies? Edison. Edison has 1890s pictures of people dancing on the vaudeville stage and doing these kinds of things, and also one of a little black boy standing on a platform and doing this kind of dancing. So you can see those. They're in the Library of Congress. You can see those. They're very.
The Edison cakewalk film.
Yeah.
It's a troupe. They were called Williams and Walker.
Yes, Williams and Walker.
Ironically, one of the people that was in that troupe, her name was Daisy Tapley. She lived in Sag Harbor. She was with the Williams and Walker troupe and did the cakewalk and all that. But she opened up a boarding house. And she actually made the first recording that's known of a black female singer.
Oh.
And she's buried right in the cemetery in Sag Harbor, died 1924.
So amazing.
Yes.
And how does he know this?
How do you know
I
that?
found the photograph
You
record
found
in
it?
a junk shop.
Oh
I
my,
said, who's Daisy Tapley? And I researched it. And I was like,
fantastic.
oh my God, well, I didn't know she lived here. Then I started to research it further. She lived in Sag Harbor. And I looked for about a year for where she might have been buried. And of course, I went to the African American cemetery, but all the tombstones are really in bad shape.
Yeah.
But then I just decided to check Oakland, and there she was. It's incredible.
Black and
You can
white.
see it, anyone can see it. Oh, she was black. It was a black, Williams and Walker was a black.
Oh yeah, they're a black.
Very
It
popular.
was probably more prestigious.
He wound up in the Ziegfeld Follies.
Yep.
Which was extraordinary because that was a white show on Broadway, but he was allowed, he was the only black in that show. Anyway.
No, that's wonderful. So you know about what researching's like. You find this little thing, like your little record, and then you have to just try to, see if you can figure out.
Daisy Tapley's head at the church in Sag Harbor, the church where they have all those.
Oh, the art.
That's on the windows. She's one of the ones.
She's in there.
That's good. That's
good.
good.
Oh.
Yeah, Long Island has a very interesting history of mixing of the races. Because where we live down in Setauket and Stony Brook is, of course, where William Sidney Mount, the artist, painted all the people around him, and all these African Americans did such beautiful pictures of dancers and fiddle players and so on. And a lot of those people's relatives are still there. They go to the African American Methodist Episcopal Church where I go. It's very kind of exciting. Yeah. Who would think Long Island would have so much to offer?
Well, Sag Harbor, I think it was because they got all the black performers
Oh, they
who
did.
made good money in New York, came out here and started Nineveh, and
Oh,
they started their communities because they had the money to buy property.
oh, yeah. Well, and there were already some African-American communities out here because of, well, first there were plantations, but yeah, and the whaling, that's exactly right. And then also the servants for the people that vacationed out here, and they would build little houses for them. So, yeah. Great. What a wonderfully knowledgeable group you are. Yeah? Or we-
I think everybody knew the Sag Harbor story. I mean, it's such common knowledge. No, I'm kidding.
I know, I was gonna say, are you kidding?
Never heard it.
Not me neither.
Well, he just found, just like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, he did, and that's how he got the church put it up, and they had the Whaling Museum, did a thing about, women, like famous women, and an exhibit.
Oh,
And
good.
She was in there, and he gave them his record to show.
Uh-huh.
You know, the record that she did.
Yeah,
As part of the exhibit.
Yeah.
wonderful. Gosh.
I'd like to piece it together.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the books that Doug Surhoff and Lynn Abbott did? Well, you would love them. It traces through the news all the black press.
Mhm.
Many of the major cities had black newspapers.
Yeah.
And of course, the showbiz stuff is in there and starts maybe in the 1890s, so it's not quite as far as where you've gone. But from that point, like 1895 on, it's extraordinarily
Yeah.
well preserved
Yeah.
in terms of following how the development of things like the blues really came about
Mhm.
in these musical theaters
Yeah.
that were really taverns with a stage.
That's right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the newspapers are really.
Yeah. Well, this person right here, Vincent DiGirolamo, he wrote that book back there, Crying the News.
Mhm.
And I don't know how far back did you find African-American newspapers? Well, of course, there are the abolitionist newspapers, but.
1920s, 30s. But around that time, the 1 year there was 100 African-American newspapers founded in like 1901.
Wow.
So they flourished.
Yeah.
In cities especially.
Yeah.
Thank God some of them were preserved.
Yeah, thank goodness.
And the
Yeah.
sadness is the proliferation, how many there were, and now it's all consolidated. and
Lots of
few.
Yeah, so
Every year.
about newspapers, yeah, in particular. Yeah, well, and that's ephemera, so that it gets saved. It's wonderful. Dancing is, of course, entirely ephemera because you dance and then it's gone. So, but I had enough descriptions that I could put them together, and so I do have in the book. I do have descriptions of them dancing and how it would have looked and all that kind of thing.
They were.
Yes, you can find the posters but more the ads in the newspapers. You get way more, but there are posters as well, especially up in Harvard. They have a big archive in the theater collection. So, yeah.
And like you pointed out, you have the illustrations, people did. do
People-
an
yes,
illustration
they
of
did.
What they received.
Yeah, yeah.
It's-
Well, like these are Juba's legs right here, and those are Diamond's legs as they're dancing. And so, yes, of course you would have, because we think that. No, yeah. So he's playing. So he's the Irish guy, and this is him. Actually, Juba went to England, and he finishes his career in England.
You didn't say it right. Juba was a respectable guy. And
Diamond.
was a brawler, there's a whole lot.
He stabs a guy. He shoots a guy. He gets thrown in prison. He's a totally different kind of, and they're just total opposites, and yet they come together for these. And then after their very last match, which was up in Boston, Juba comes back to New York. He gets picked up by this minstrel troupe who takes him to England. Diamond joins the Mexican War. He goes and fights in the Mexican War, and he gets court-martialed for attacking his superior. So, yeah, he was rowdy. Yeah. Oh, so great. So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. You guys too.